Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome to the first edition of the Curtain Call podcast. New name, we have no more enemies to get to know, but as always, Wednesday nights, Geoffrey, Benedict, Michael Beck. Geoffrey, how are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good again.
So you've already gotten the sting of that wild card playoff loss out of your mouth, I assume?
I mostly just don't think about it.
You know what?
I broke down the film and I'm moving on to other film. I'm going to watch other film. I'm not going to watch that again for a while, and I'm okay.
For me, I think it was watching Baltimore and Cleveland lose. Now I'm like, okay, I can get back into the playoffs a little bit here. That took a little bit of that edge off.
Yeah, dude. If Baltimore was playing Cleveland to go to the Super Bowl, I'd just be like tearing my hair out. I don't have a lot, but I'd tear what I have out.
I probably wouldn't watch that, to be honest. It hurt too bad.
You'd just be like, why? It wouldn't even be good football to watch either. You'd be like, oh, we watch this twice a year. No one likes this game.
You know what? Like, they did have the game of the year on that one Thursday night, though, where they went back and forth. That was an outstanding game to watch, as much as it pains me to say.
Game without defense. I don't care.
Exactly. Well, the news of the day today, of course, is Phillip Rivers announcing his retirement. Some pretty big news, because now there's only 3 guys remaining from that 2004 draft class. Of course, Andy Lee, the punter, I believe he's still punting for the 49ers, and Larry Fitzgerald still there in Arizona. His future's up in the air. That last guy out of those 3, Ben Roethlisberger, and it's going to lead us into the topic of the show. Ben Roethlisberger, he is that last quarterback from that 04 draft class. And tonight we really wanted to talk about who we think at this point, who's in and who's out. And Ben Roethlisberger, obviously massive cap hit, aging. Who knows if he wants to play in whoever this next offensive coordinator system is, because as of right now, we still don't know who it is, even though we thought it was Fat Canada. There's a whole lot going on here, Geoffrey. So just trying to get to what I'm trying to get to. Ben Roethlisberger, is he coming back next year, yes or no?
Yes.
Absolutely. You think he's going to be the guy?
He's not going down like that. He's not. Like, it's Ben Roethlisberger. Can you imagine him? His last game is losing to Cleveland in the playoffs. Like, he's absolutely owned them. He held, like, wasn't it this year he lost? Baker Mayfield passed him for most wins in their stadium?
Yes.
That was this season. Like, he has owned the Browns. He can't go out with a loss to the Browns. You can't do that. Like, what you're gonna do, you're gonna go back home and they're gonna be like, yeah, we ended your career. Like, he's from Ohio. Like, there's no way he's doing that. He's gotta come back. He's gotta end his career with at least a win over Cleveland. So for me, he's coming back.
You know what, though? Like 501 yards, 4 touchdowns, 4 picks. That is a Ben Roethlisberger experience right there. If it wasn't the Browns.
Yeah. That is the quintessential Ben Roethlisberger experience. You're like, oh, he sucks. No, he's great. Oh, he sucks again. No, he's great. He's the best quarterback in the world. Oh, he sucks.
Oh, if we had 5 minutes left, we would have won.
Yeah, really.
But in the flip side, say Matt Canada does get the job and he's like, no, we are running my system. I don't care what you say. Is he going to do that? Is he going to be a system quarterback that he doesn't want to be in?
There is stuff in Matt Canada's system he can run. I'll go back to my film room I said about Cleveland. My film room I had about Cleveland's offense. There is motion Ben does run. He's got to get better at it. And one of the points I'm making about Ben is he has to buy in, but they also need time. COVID restrictions for this season, where we are when the draft is happening, when all that is going to be a big deal, because if we can do OTAs, if they can meet in person, if he's able to get with Matt Canada, get with his receivers, really work on what the motion is doing, how it's affecting the play, that stuff, and really buy in and get accustomed to that system. Because remember, he couldn't throw for a long time last season, and then like for some of the offseason, and then like he's on a limited pitch count. You know, he's trying to build charisma with, a relationship with his receivers. There's so much changeover. They don't know what's going on. And if you remember in the offseason, they were talking about Matt Canada's working with the run game. Ben said that. Oh, he's working a lot with the run game. Well, yeah, we need him to work with the pass game now. Because when it was worked with the run game worked. Even with, a makeshift offensive line, sometimes patched up and injured people. Through 5 games, we're a top 10 running game in the NFL with Canada's motion. but it didn't work in the passing game. So this year, if Matt Canada is the dude, they got to get it working in the passing game, use what they can, get Ben accustomed to everything he can, and make it work, because it worked in Cleveland for Baker Mayfield. I still think Ben at this point in his career is better than Baker Mayfield is at this point in his career. That may change in a year. But at this point, yeah, I'm taking Ben. He could run that. He can run that.
Now, one of the things BTSC group chat was chatting about just before we went on the air was like Aaron Rodgers and completely buying into Matt LaFleur's system. And one of the things that happened to him this offseason, of course, their first round pick, they pick up Jordan Love. They take another quarterback, and in all likelihood, it probably lit a fire under Aaron Rodgers. There's been recent mock drafts going as far as saying the Steelers might even trade into the top 10 of the draft once again, like they did when they went after Bush. Actually, I like Lance. Someone like myself, a fairly big BTSC guy, I would love the move. But do you think Ben Roethlisberger would even want to mentor a guy like that for a year? Would he be like more motivated to even play? Like we saw it with Mason Rudolph. He's like, nah, I don't want anything to do with this guy. Would Ben Roethlisberger be willing to kind of put someone under his wing, or the Steelers basically pushing a corner saying you're not going finding this guy's replacement this year?
Ben Roethlisberger would be Ben Roethlisberger. He would prepare to be the starting quarterback, and if he had time, be like, "Yo, hey kid, this is how you throw a corner route." I don't really know how much a veteran quarterback. Like, if you have questions in the film room, you can ask them. I think Josh Dobbs talked about that at one point. Like, how do you learn from a veteran quarterback? Is when you're in a film room with them, you sit there and take notes. You sit there and look, and you see, what is he seeing? What are they talking about? How are they doing this? And do I see what they're seeing? That's really the big thing. What's Ben going to teach him? Like, Ben's not going to teach him how to throw a defensive lineman to the ground and throw a back corner, shot to the end zone to win the Super Bowl. You can't just teach that. So for me, I think that's all overblown. Ben would be Ben. And hopefully if the Steelers did draft a new quarterback, they would sign another quarterback's coach, especially if Matt Canada ends up the offense coordinator or leaves. Get a quarterback coach. Don't be cheap on that.
Yeah, that's one of the things this offseason that the Steelers need to employ more coaches. They obviously have a lot of openings, but they had 19 coaches, which was the least in the league, the least full-time guys. But with Ben Roethlisberger, let's just say he plays this year, and he plays like how Eli Manning did in his final year and just kind of gives up the reins. Is that something, like, if Ben plays poorly, are the Steelers just gonna ride that into the dirt, or are they going to move on to Mason Rudolph or potentially a rookie? If Ben is truly back, is this his team no matter what?
I think for the most part, yeah. Like, and that's not Tomlin. That's not the offensive coordinator. That's the owner. That's the ownership. The Rooneys have been ride or die with Ben Roethlisberger from the start. From 2004 when they drafted him, when the story goes that Dan Rooney was like, no, we're drafting the quarterback. Like, stop talking about it. Whatever decision they were going to make, the rumor is he went in there and was like, we're getting the quarterback. The quarterback's there. Get the quarterback. What are you doing, guys? Like, and ever since then, it has been, Ben is the franchise. The franchise quarterback is the franchise. So I think they're ride or die with Ben, but it's not like if he's playing his way out of the league where he is just that bad and it's clear that he can't play, they would move on. Ben would be like, you know what, I can't do it. I think Ben would actually pull himself and be like, I can't do this anymore. I'm done, if he really was. But I think he'll be all right. They just need a system that works with him, and they need to get him, doing that system.
I actually believe it was, speaking of that draft, I believe it was Dave Damashek who said Bill Cowher actually preferred Phillip Rivers out of all the quarterbacks in that draft, which who knows how history.
Long time story I've been saying, like, that's true. I remember back in 2004, like, he wanted Phillip Rivers, and people talk about, his throwing motion, and Bill Cowher would be like, he's just a winner. He going out there and won. It doesn't matter his throwing, all this stuff. And he talked Phillip Rivers into being the number 2 quarterback in that draft. Bill Cowher did that. That's my opinion. But Phillip Rivers was the number 3 quarterback in that draft, or they were like, oh, who's number 2? But it wasn't close. It wasn't like Eli Manning, Phillip Rivers, who's better? It was Eli's number 1, but who's number 2? And Phillip Rivers ends up number 2 and playing for the team with the number 1 pick after Bill Cowher talked him up constantly. Of course, he had that great Senior Bowl too, but then the Steelers end up with Ben Roethlisberger, and we're the only team he visited. There's all this stuff. At the time, I was like, is this, like, did the Steelers pull a fast one? Did they really pull a fast one? Did they get the rest of the league looking at Rivers and then swipe Ben at 11? But I don't know. It's quite possible that Bill Cowher really was that much on Phillip Rivers. Bill Cowher's not the sneakiest guy. I think that's right. He wanted Phillip.
Yeah, and from all accounts too, from the Giants staff, if Eli actually wanted to play in San Diego, Ben would have ended up with the Giants. He would have been the number 2 pick, and Phillip Rivers probably ends up being the Steelers pick. So it's funny how history works out. But of course, those 3 QBs at the top of the draft, they had great careers. Ben just happens to be the last one standing. He's gonna end up with all the stats, be the leading stats guy. He has the 2 rings. Could he win a third? I mean, the Steelers would need some rookies to be really good next year for that to happen. So moving on from the Ben stuff, because of course there's a ton of guys that could be moving on. Like, this offseason is going to be insane. I think the reports that Pro Football Talk, so take it as you will, Mike Florio saying the cap might be $180 million, which is still like a significant drop off from this past year. That would seriously hurt the Steelers and seriously hurt some free agents. Almost basically mean they can sign guys that for vet minimum, and that might be what happens this offseason. That's one of the reasons why it's so scary. But one of the guys that has his ticket expiring in just a couple months is Juju Smith-Schuster. Very polarizing this year, of course. What should the Steelers do with the guy that's currently their number 1 wide receiver?
I think you have to let him go, simply because you have Chase Claypool, you have Deontay Johnson. You have James Washington, who has shown he can step in when Juju's out and play well. So your drop-off statistically, your drop-off in the talent and the play is not small. Your drop-off in the production at the position that they were playing Juju Smith-Schuster isn't that big. It's not going to be huge. I am a Juju Smith-Schuster fan. I think a lot of the flack he gets is just dumb. He plays hard. I just did a film review of the first week, watching Juju Smith-Schuster in that first week against the New York Giants. He was phenomenal. You watch him last year before he got hurt. He was phenomenal. He's going to go somewhere and be a really, really good number 2. You know, he's one of those guys. He's not the number 1, but he could be the best number 2, like one of the best number 2s in the league. He's that kind of player. So Juju, I don't think you can bring him back because you can't. He's not worth to the Steelers what he will be worth to another team. So other teams are going to pay him what he'd be worth to them, and we would have to outbid that. We would have to pay Juju Smith-Schuster more than he would be worth to another team, and he's not going to be worth that to us.
Yeah, and I think one of the teams that are kind of the betting favorite right now would be Washington. Him being the number 2 to Terry McLaurin, I think that would be an outstanding duo. And potentially the way it goes, the Steelers just don't have the money. I think you're right. I don't think they're going to be able to match whatever he's offered. So he's going to have to take a discount. Would he want to do that? Probably not. He's a West Coast guy too. If he gets an offer from home, I mean, him going to LA, of course, he's the big tech guy. So like that might just be an outstanding career move for him. So and I would totally understand that.
My two big teams for Juju Smith-Schuster are Baltimore. They need a receiver. He would fit there. It's in that East Coast. And the other one is Arizona. I would love to see him go to Arizona. People talk about Juju having distractions where he focuses on his brand. He could go and play with DeAndre Hopkins, who is the CEO of a real estate company that he started. Like, the guy runs businesses and plays football. That would be a great mashup with Juju Smith-Schuster, because that's a dude who's like, dude, you want to build your brand? Let me give you some good business advice. Let me really get to you. And I think it would be good for Juju Smith-Schuster, and it would be phenomenal for Kyler Murray to have those two guys on the same team. That would be a great fit for Juju.
Now, you speak of the Cardinals, and something that I've talked about a lot. The Steelers, I think it'd be a mistake. I know the Steelers are really good at drafting receivers, but they don't have any veteran voices in the locker room outside of Ben Roethlisberger, who, by all accounts, really isn't the most sociable type. Yeah. So, in my opinion, I think they should be going after a veteran guy, whether or not they even play. Like, they could be like a bench guy just to like go through the motions and teach them. I know I mentioned Larry Fitzgerald. I know that's not the most feasible thing in the world. A friend of mine messaged me and said, what do you think about Julian Edelman? I don't think that's the personality, but I just think the Steelers should be going after someone a little bit older. Do you buy in on that?
I absolutely do. One of the things I've always said about Mike Tomlin is they have a veteran in the room. I loved the combination of Darius Hayward-Bay and Antonio Brown in that locker room where you had Antonio Brown. He was a 6th-round pick. He was a superstar because he worked his butt off. And then you had Darius Hayward-Bay, who was a 1st-round pick, who was a flop, who was still in the league. Why? Because he worked his butt off. And so that was a great duo to show these young guys, be like, you can be a nobody and you can coming in and be and make it in this league. It doesn't matter. Or you can not have the talent to be a starting wide receiver and still make it in this league. The key element is you got to work hard. They had that kind of combination. We don't have that now. We had Juju Smith-Schuster, whose idea of hey guys, we need to have more fun. We need to have more fun out here. And that's when Juju's at his best, is when he's having fun. But that's not the veteran leadership you want in a room. Is, hey guys, let's try to have more fun and lighten up. It just doesn't. That message isn't really what you want. I love Larry Fitzgerald. Obviously, I had season tickets his last year at Pitt. I watched a lot of him play. I love Larry Fitzgerald. That would be a dream come true for him to come home. I don't even care. Come back to Pittsburgh, do whatever you want. Wouldn't matter. But that'd be good.
I think if he mentored Chase Claypool, that'd be perfect. They're like similar build, similar speed. They're very similar players. So if you could teach Chase Claypool to be Larry Fitzgerald, you'd have a really, really good receiver. And me being someone that says you should probably never re-sign your skill guys, you have to re-sign a guy like Larry Fitzgerald until he's done playing football. That's just the way it goes. But,
something at that level.
Moving on throughout this offense here, James Conner, the Steelers running back spot, it's already being hyper criticized. We don't know exactly where they're going to go this offseason at this spot. I think a lot of it's going to be telling on who they bring in heading into the draft. I think after the second day of the draft, you know exactly what the Steelers running back room is going to look like. Jerry Dulac of the Post-Gazette was talking today in his mailbag that he thinks the Steelers will definitely go running back within the first 2 rounds. And he said if Najee Harris is there at 24, that's the pick, which is pretty insane to me as someone who's been avoid running back by all costs. But James Conner, he even said James Conner could be the guy that remains in Pittsburgh as the number 2, or they go out and find a veteran guy like D'Angelo Williams, end of their career guy. Well, what do you think the Steelers should do in this case? James Conner, is he the fit at number 2, or should they go looking for someone else?
Okay, I will say this. If you get a Najee Harris with the number 1 pick, James Conner, you would want to keep him. And the reason is, to me, James Conner is a Kareem Hunt. He's a guy that in the right offense that's creating space for him, like that Kansas City offense, which was ridiculous. No one's stuffing the run against Kansas City. Kareem Hunt went off on Cleveland. He's a really good backup. When he starts, he's okay. He's James Conner. Kareem Hunt is James Conner. And James Conner, to me, is the ideal number 2 in that situation where he can be your third down guy. He can come in when you need to throw the ball a lot. Great in pass pickup, good running back, phenomenal receiver out of the backfield. He's that guy, and that really takes a lot of pressure off a number 1 back that you take to just be like, dude, when you come in, you got to worry about running and some basic pass blocking. You don't have to run the whole offense. You just have to be dynamic, right? Do what you do. And James Conner can pick up the rest. James Conner can do anything in this offense, and he could, especially when you're talking Matt Canada. If he's bringing back more of his stuff, bringing more of his stuff in the offense, James Conner's run it all. James Conner's run all of Matt Canada's weird stuff, sweeps, and he did all of that at Pitt. So he is, to me, a great running back to bring back if you can. But that's all on cost. I don't know what he's going to get on the free agency market. What would Kareem Hunt be worth on the free agent market right now? I don't even know their value. I look at running backs today and I'm like, I don't know what anyone's paying these guys. I don't really know. And if James Conner is cheap enough, yeah, bring him back. Absolutely. If he's not, you got to let him go.
Yeah, I think one of the things with James Conner too is that he's a Pittsburgh guy. So I think he might be more willing to take a discount. But like you said, who's paying running backs anymore? Like every single year, it continues the trend. If you sign a big contract, you're probably going to stink the next year, and your career's probably over. Like I don't understand why teams continue to sign running backs to huge deals. Like even Derrick Henry just had 2,000 yards better each year in the league. But do you offer him a contract? Like is he the outlier? That's what people have been saying about everyone. Like at some point, you just kind of got to be like, it's the valueless position. Sorry, guys. Like you should have been a receiver. Like, yeah, that's really what it comes down to. So maybe Connor can take a little bit less money. Yeah, I want to spend a lot of time on the offense line and a little bit on the tight end. So I do want to leave on one more question before we get there. When it comes to draft day, at this point right now, say the Steelers have three options. One, trading up to get a quarterback, say trading all the way up in the top 10. Two, staying where they are, taking a running back at that spot like Najee Harris, like Jerry Dulac suggests. Or three, taking a tackle at that spot. What are you doing right now?
I take the tackle. That would be my number one. Number two would be trade up for the quarterback, and number three would be running back. But that's if you have the coach, if you get the right offensive line coach, if you get the right offense, and you're saying what we really need is a running back with great vision who can do all this stuff, maybe that's the last piece. Maybe that's the piece that if you get you get a good offensive line coach, you get Matt Canada's system, Ben is buying into it, and you say, if we had a Nick Chubb, we could have this offense be like Cleveland's offense, be a legit top 10 offense, and add that defense to it. That's the only way you go running back to me, is if you really think that's the missing piece, is that running back. That's the only way you go running back.
I think that's the only time you draft a running back with your first two picks, is when you feel like you are one guy away on offense. And I really don't know if the Steelers are at that point right now. I think if they go running back in the first round, they have to nail the next two picks on the offense line, period. Like there's no messing around elsewhere. Or like you have to nail it.
Yeah, if they draft a running back, they are all in on the end of Ben's career. That's all they're signaling. They're signaling straight up, this is all about Ben. This is all about getting Ben a Super Bowl win before he's done. And that could mean like really, if they draft a running back with the first round, I'm looking for Ben to be extended.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, it's one of those things. A running back just doesn't carry the same value. And Najee Harris, he's 23 years old. He's not not considerably young by any draft standard. So that'd be kind of go outside of the way of the Steelers loving to go after their underclassmen with their top picks. So it'll be something to watch as this kind of offseason develops. But continuing along, I know we still got a lot to get to on offense, but we'll mesh the tight ends in together here. Vance McDonald and Eric Ebron. I think Vance is probably as good as gone because he's got that team option. Do you see a world where either of the tight ends are coming back next year?
I think Ebron's back. Ebron really played well this season. This was one of his best. I mean, not statistically, but you watch his film, you look at the snaps he played. This was one of the best years of his career. Other than stats. And he was a real weapon in this offense until the offense died. The offense really it really did. It just died. If they get a run game going, Ebron is such a weapon because he can block. And he's one of those guys that in that kind of a running game offense and where you have a lot of motion and stuff, one of the keys is your tight end someone who can block people. And like if you can cover Eric Ebron, he can block you. If you can cover Eric Ebron, he can block you. If you can handle Eric Ebron in a run play, you can't cover Eric Ebron. So Eric Ebron is a matchup weapon, and he matters a lot if you're trying to fix the scheme. So I think Ebron's back. I think McDonald's gone. And I think you see a backup tight end maybe, or you see someone brought in.
Yeah. Now let's I think that's going to do it for the tight end. Sorry, guys, but we really need to talk about the offensive line here, which is going to be the most important offseason decisions there are outside of Ben Roethlisberger. It's going to be potentially a giant overhaul here. And I think we should start off at left tackle. Like there's been tons of rumors throughout this entire year, dating back to when we interviewed Zach Banner here on this show, that he suggested this potentially could be Alejandro Villanueva's last year. Do you think Big Al's back? He's a free agent. Is there any reason for the Steelers to bring him back if he wants to come back?
Well, when you have David DeCastro, Zach Banner, you have so many people on this team. So there's so many people in that organization who have stated this could be his last season. That's kind of telling you he's let them know that this is his last season. And they don't want to be on the record saying Alejandro Villanueva is done before he says it. He's done. He's gone. This is it.
So then continuing on with another guy with retirement rumors, that of course being Maurkice Pouncey. It's been talked about a little bit after the game. Some sources said he did retire, but that turned out to be false. He still potentially could be retiring. That also could affect Ben Roethlisberger. So Maurkice Pouncey still find themselves in the center, or is he gone no matter what?
I think Maurkice Pouncey stays. I would like him to stay. I am a Maurkice Pouncey fan. He's still got it. When he's healthy, he really has it. When he's not healthy, excuse me, if you have to choose between David DeCastro playing hurt and Maurkice Pouncey playing hurt, I'm taking Pouncey. Honestly, Pouncey plays through crap. I know he's had a lot of injuries. I think he's going to come back another year. And I'm good with that. I would love to see him play on a line where he's got a healthy DeCastro on one side and Kevin Dotson on the other side. He looked good when that was the case. Even though he was playing through some injuries, he looked good. I want Maurkice Pouncey back.
Yeah, I totally understand that. Continuing along on that offensive line, and I want to put my 2 cents in here as well, because going back to that Jerry Dulac story, I know Geoffrey and we talked about it earlier. Jerry suggested that the Steelers, in their search of making some sort of salary cap decisions, they might be trading someone. And in that sense, the only real person that made sense to me that would be on the trade block would be David DeCastro. And he could be a guy that the Steelers could use to move up in the draft by pairing him with a pick. They might be trying to add another pick. I know Evan loves when I talk about J.J. Watt, so who knows if that's the one-for-one swap? Potentially, who knows? It's one of those things where you don't really know with the trade piece. But do you think David DeCastro is back, or do you think is he released? Is he traded? What happens with David DeCastro?
See, I think he's coming back. I think he is key if you're doing that one more year with Ben, which is the way I just am assuming the Steelers are going to approach this. That's the way I believe they will, is one more year, maybe 2 with Ben. And so I think DeCastro will be back. If he does move on, you almost have to sign Filer. You almost have to because you're not going to go in and be like, well, we just don't have a guard. Somebody's going to have to take that spot. So I think DeCastro is likely to stay.
Now, before we get to the other guys, I know we talked about a lot of those key pieces on offense so far. The Steelers are going to have to find some money somewhere. Do you think they are going to be more in the market of extending guys to try to bring the cap number down, or do you still think there's going to be some hard decisions made and some guys getting released?
Well, they're going to punt money back, especially if Ben returns. If Ben doesn't return, then maybe you play this out. You take that $19 million, you make the best you can, you get a higher draft pick, and you get a lot of dead money off the books and start fresh with a year where the cap is probably going to go up substantially if things improve and they can actually have fans next year. Other than that, I think they're going to have to make some tough decisions, obviously, but I think you will see extensions, especially if Ben is back. But they're going to lose some people.
Okay. Now, rounding out our offensive line here, I think there's 2 names in particular we really need to get to. Matt Filer and Zach Banner. Of course, Zach Banner tore his ACL. He's going to have the max amount of time he can get to rehab from that sucker. So he should be 100% come season. What do you think happens between Filer and Zach Banner?
They have to bring back Zach Banner. You have to. No other team knows him like the Steelers does. He had 1 game. He looked pretty good in run blocking in that game. So for me, it just makes sense for him. It makes sense for the Steelers to get a 1-year deal. I know he was really trying to be a starter so he could get a big deal after this one expired, but it didn't happen. So you're looking at a 1-year kind of prove it deal where we can say, hey, we don't have cap money. No one else has cap money. We'll give you a shot to win a job, but you're going to do it on a lower contract. I like Banner a lot. I think that could work out really well for the Steelers. if they go that direction, you can let Matt Filer walk and say, we've got Chooks, we've got Banner, we draft somebody, and you're good. That's 3. If the rookie's not ready, then it's Chooks. I think you'd see Rat Banner at right tackle, Chooks Okorafor at left tackle, and a rookie working his way in to taking over that left tackle spot. That would be kind of my ideal situation on the offensive line. You save a bunch of money, and you get good. You have the chance of having a really good offensive line.
Awesome. Now, that seemed like some pretty good timing there. We're right at the 30-minute mark. So if you're listening on the podcast side, click over to part 2. If you're on Facebook or on YouTube, make sure just to sit tight. We'll flip over to the second part of our podcast here in just a moment. So just hang tight, and we will be back for part 2 shortly. Pittsburgh Steelers fans, we are back talking about who's coming back to the Steelers next. Who we're going to let go. My name is Beck, deputy editor of BehindSteelCurtain.com, joined as always by the fabulous Geoffrey Benedict. We're talking about the defensive side. So it's also all about compliments now. We got to build each other up after that terrible playoff performance. That's what it comes down to, Geoffrey. But defensive side, before we even talk about any of the players, should the Steelers invest even like a single draft pick into this defense? They're full of draft picks as it is. Should the Steelers, is it time for them to focus completely on offense when it comes to drafting guys?
I don't think you see a first-round pick unless all the offensive linemen are gone. Then I could see it. Probably a few. You're going to have some defensive backs you got to replace. This year at least one. Next year some more. They're in pretty good shape. You probably need another outside linebacker. Just for your number 3. But other than that, mostly offense. But I think you'll see more balance than a lot of people would like. I know we all tend to do that. The offense needs work, so just draft 10 players on offense and trade back and get and maybe some of them are good. But that's not how the Steelers ever work, no matter how much we want them to. So they'll get a good balance, but there's not a lot of holes on defense.
Speaking of big holes, Bud Dupree, that's a massive one to try to fill if he goes. But of course, coming off the ACL, he might be worth a little bit more or a little bit less, which might benefit the Steelers. He's someone, you look at his sack totals and how he's developed, and you watch the film and how he wrecks a game, how he's a game changer. It would really suck if the Steelers lost this guy. Is there any world where he is back in the black and gold next year?
I don't think there is. And this is the sad thing. You know this. I'm a huge Bud Dupree fan. Anyone who knows me from behind the steel curtain, I have been a Bud Dupree apologist when he was, considered a bust. I have been like, no, he's actually better than you think. It just doesn't show up in stats. Let me just, in honor of Bud Dupree, let me give you some numbers here. All right. Weeks 1 through 12, the weeks Bud Dupree played. Are you ready for this? Steelers had 41 sacks, almost 4 a game. They averaged almost 4 a game, 3.73 a game. 7 of their first 11 games were under 100 yards rushing allowed. That's over 60% of the games. 16 interceptions in 11 games. That's 1.45 interceptions per game. And they had a 71.5 passer rating against. Since Bud Dupree was injured and was no longer on the field, and I'm an Alex Highsmith fan. I think he's good. We're going to get into him. But they had 15 sacks in those games. That's 2.5 per game. Over a sack per game lost once Bud Dupree went out. They had 1 of 6 games with under 100 yards rushing allowed. They allowed 100 yards rushing in over 80% of their games, when before then it was 35% of their games. They had 2 interceptions in 6 games. That's a 1 interception every 3 games instead of 1.5 interceptions per game average. And they had a 92.9 passer rating against. Bud Dupree makes a huge difference on the field, much bigger than just his stats. He is a phenomenal player. He is the guy who buys into team first, stats second. He is that guy. And whoever signs him, granted, it needs to be a team that runs a 3-4 and ideally has a pass rusher at the other spot. A young stud pass rusher at the other spot that you're just like, we want to turn that guy loose, and we need the other side to be held down really well. Bud Dupree's your dude. Before he was getting sacks, he was keeping quarterbacks in the pocket. He was limiting rushing yards. He was limiting passing, short screen passes on his side. The dude is an absolute game wrecker who in the last 2 years has learned how to turn just being from a guy who creates havoc to a guy who can finish a play. So for me, Bud Dupree is my favorite Steeler. And this is it. That was that awful game against the Ravens was that awful win against the Ravens was his last time in a Steelers jersey. And that breaks my heart. And I love you, Bud Dupree. And you're going to tear up the league wherever he goes. He's going to do it. And I'm sad he's gone. I'm like, it's depressing. That's the most depressing thing about this season. So, yeah, go say what you want to say. I'm going to sit here and mope for a minute.
I thought I'd make you smile with that new Stat Geek comment, but
yeah.
You know what? Bud Dupree meant so much when he got hurt. The locker room after that Ravens game, everyone was like down. Everyone was like, "Oh man, season's over." That's really how it felt, and that's what happened. Like when you hear the interviews, it's like, how could the Steelers not bring this guy back? Like they need to find the money to bring him back. He means too much to this team.
If they bring him back, I'm gonna be like freaking out. Like I'm gonna be drunk for a week. I don't even know. Like it's gonna be crazy for me if they find a way. Like no, see, I'm getting my hopes up right now. I'm getting excited. No, he's gone. He's just gone, people. If he comes back, we would have the best three. We'd have the best. Oh, we'd be so good with Alex Highsmith. Alex Highsmith's legit. Well, let's move to Alex Highsmith. Let's move to Alex Highsmith really quick because this is why Bud Dupree is gone. The reason Bud Dupree is gone is because Alex Highsmith is legit. Alex Highsmith is legit. He was a rookie this year. There was a lot of drop-off. He did not work well with Cameron Hayward when they moved him to the other side. He didn't work well with Stephon Tuitt. He just doesn't have experience with those guys. But by himself, his individual talent, he is a really good player. He can do the things Bud Dupree gave them. He's just not at Bud Dupree's level, especially right now. He's not quite the athlete Bud Dupree is. He doesn't give you that. Quarterbacks are going to escape the pocket more. We're going to have to deal with that again. You know, when Bud Dupree came in, the Steelers stopped giving up yards to quarterbacks scrambling. It just stopped happening. That play against Miami in the playoffs will continue to be one of my favorite plays ever, where their quarterback's like, I can just run out of the pocket. Bud Dupree's like, no. Oh, you run out of the pocket, I'm going to run you out of the game. And it's like quarterbacks, you see it, like they just don't leave the pocket because Bud Dupree's there. And he's like, come on out here. Come on, guys. Come out. And they're just like, no, it's okay. Cam Hayward can fall on me. That's fine. I'm not leaving this pocket and having Bud Dupree like send me into next week. And that's, as a Steeler fan, you got to love that. You got to just love that. So, but Alex Highsmith's the real deal. You have to let Bud Dupree go simply for the fact that where are the snaps? Like you can't play these guys 60% of the snaps. You can't play TJ Watt 60%. You can't play Bud Dupree 60%, and you can't play Alex Highsmith 60%. You can't do it. They're all too good. Bud Dupree has to go. And that's awful. It's sad, but that's what happens when you draft an Alex Highsmith. You let Bud do. That's why you drafted Alex Highsmith. He has lived up to his expectations more. Bud Dupree's gone. Let's move on.
No, one more question. I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
In hindsight, would you have given the Cam Hayward deal to Cam Hayward before the season started? Or would you let Cam walk this offseason in order to keep Bud Dupree in the black and gold?
Oh, see, now you're going to Cam.
Still Cam
Hayward. Cameron Hayward is the heart and soul of that defense. You look at him after that playoff loss, when he came out there and talked about how the defense failed, that man is a Steeler. You know what I'm saying? That man gets it. And he is the exact guy you want leading this locker room. My favorite, the best interview show on in the world is Bud Dupree's show, Bud Brought a Buddy. You look at his interview with Cam Hayward. It's phenomenal how he ribs Cam. I love that video. I watch that periodically. It's the best. You know what? Yeah, you got to go Cam Hayward. But wherever Bud Dupree goes, Bud, I salute you. You're still my favorite Steeler until the day you leave. You're my favorite Steeler. You're going to be one of my favorite Steelers of all time. And wherever you go, tear the league up, and please don't go in the AFC North.
Speaking of that Cam Hayward being a huge leader thing, that's what the offense needs out of one of its skill players. And
absolutely.
You know what? If anyone could be that, like that's a rookie. I've watched Najee Harris speak a lot in press conferences. He is a good dude. He seems like he's a passionate dude. And if he can be what Hayward is to the defense as a leader, then I'd be all for drafting him in the first round. Like
you know who was Cameron Hayward on offense? Jerome Bettis.
Absolutely. The team changed.
Bettis, man, and the team just rallied behind him. It was crazy how much he was loved. If you could find that, that's worth the first round pick if it's a running back. That's worth
Absolutely.
it. Absolutely. If Najee Harris, if the Steelers think he's that dude, no brainer.
Yeah,
grab him at 24.
I don't think it's the combine that would get him picked. It's what he does in the interviews with the team is what would make him picked by the Steelers at 24.
Mm-hmm.
If he's that good of a leader, who knows if he even lasts to 24? It's going to be one of the things to watch. And us as non-insider types, obviously we know a ton about this team, but not in the day-to-day operations. No one's ever really going to know until years later when guys are retired and write their own books, sort of thing.
Yeah, I don't get good film on Najee Harris. Broadcast angles are terrible for evaluating people. I don't get the all 22. I don't get that with college guys, so I can't really break him down. But if he's a Nick Chubb, for me, that's a no-brainer. Take him in the first round because Nick Chubb would have had over 1,000 yards on this Steelers team. And the offense would have been on this year. This Steelers team with the injuries, the offense they ran, Nick Chubb would have gained 1,000 yards on this team. That's just he has that level of vision. Connor and Snell just beyond what Connor and Snell can do. He's just that much better. If he's a Nick Chubb talent wise, and he gives that kind of interviews, yeah, go for it.
And you know what? He is the vision guy, so I can definitely see that. He's the big time sees the hole. But moving back to the defense. Yeah, they're like it's so much fun to talk about the offense, though.
Yeah.
Middle linebacker is going to be really interesting. Of course, Robert Spillane's an RFA. I think we can both just guarantee he's coming back if the Steelers want him back.
100%. If they don't, if they somehow did that, you'd be like, who is taking charge of the Steelers, and why did they love the Cleveland Browns?
Yeah. Now, on the same note, though, of course, Devin Bush is going to be coming back. That changed the defense completely. Way better instantly with him back on the field. There's two guys that are really interesting. Vince Williams, who's under contract. He could be a guy that could earn the Steelers some money back by cutting him. He's definitely like a heart and soul type. But is he the linebacker for the modern NFL? I'll leave that to you. But the other guy, Avery Williamson, who they traded for, he's still the bulk tackler. Yeah, he's the guy that just gets guys down. I think a pairing between Avery Williamson and Devin Bush would be one of the premier inside duos in the league. So I'm curious your thought. If it came down to being able to bring Williamson back, and if that meant cutting Vince Williams, and say that saved you $1 million, would you do that? Is that something you'd be interested in, or is this Vince Williams linebacking group no matter what?
Yeah, I'm going Vince. I'm a Vince fan. Let me get you some stats on Devin Bush here, because people think about Vince Williams from what they most recently saw, which was him getting exposed in coverage a lot. But let me get you some numbers here. Vince Williams in the first 6 weeks, 5 games played, right? 2 sacks, 10 tackles for a loss, and 3 QB hits in 5 games. That's on pace for like 6.5 sacks, 30 tackles for a loss. Like, are you kidding me? He was like at the front of the league at that point. After Devin Bush left, right? After he was gone, Vince Williams had 1 sack, 4 tackles for a loss, and 1 QB hit in 10 games. 10 games. That's the difference Devin Bush makes to this defense. Early in the season, people were like, Devin Bush, he keeps getting beat in coverage. He's in all these crazy assignments. What are the Steelers doing with him? And by the way, Vince Williams is the best linebacker in the NFL. And then Devin Bush is gone. Vince Williams has to actually play like in coverage and things. And they're like, ooh, Vince, ouch. Devin Bush is going to be back. And if he plays a full season, Vince Williams is As much as like you say Avery Williamson would let Devin Bush be the playmaker Devin Bush was as a rookie. Devin Bush, who he is now, who he was in his second season, is better than that guy, better than he was in his rookie season. And he let Vince Williams be that playmaker. His speed to the ball, his ability in coverage is ridiculous. The stuff they were doing with him, we talk about like the defense ended up getting pretty boring and vanilla and predictable at the end, and teams were able to solve it. What they were doing in the first 5 weeks, like people didn't understand what they were doing. They're like, what are they doing with Devin Bush? And when you look at it, they're really like, he's like Mike Tomlin's drawing like Derek Brooks types of stuff from Tampa Bay. He's doing that kind of stuff. Devin Bush was playing like Derek Brooks level NFL football as a second-year player in the NFL. And Vince Williams, and I'm also going to add in Mike Hilton, also had phenomenal early stats. He obviously was injured, came back from injury, didn't do the same thing, but he was also phenomenal while Devin Bush was there. Devin Bush is going to be in coverage. He's going to be that dude, and you are going to see Vince go off again if Devin Bush is healthy and back and who he was in his second year. So I'm going Vince Williams, absolutely 100%.
Okay. Now, before we get to any of the backups on any of the linebackers, we got some other positions we should burn through first. Most notably, the two corner spots, the two starting corner spots. Those are the guys that the Steelers could potentially cut and save a decent chunk of money if that's the route they go. But on the flip side, I think the Steelers fans at least know that the Steelers cannot draft a corner worth the crap. They cannot do it for whatever reason. I think the best corner they ever drafted was Ike Taylor. And was Ike Taylor like this amazing Hall of Fame corner? No, I don't even know if he ever made a Pro Bowl, actually. Like, it's one of the things. It's like this team, the way they built their cornerback room right now was smart by just doing it through free agency. Could the Steelers be bold enough to cut either of these corners? Like, are both Hayden and Nelson coming back for sure next year because of their inability to find other guys?
As we talked about drafting cornerbacks, I'm going to bring up one of my favorite little tidbits of information. Sorry to hijack the show for the umpteenth time. But the best Steelers defensive back drafts were when Dick LeBeau was gone. This is the craziest thing. Dick LeBeau left the Steelers to go be the head coach of the Bengals, right? He left. He came back in 2004. He left in like 1996. In that span of time, the Steelers drafted Ike Taylor, Troy Polamalu, Chris Hope, and Chad Scott. The best defensive back they've drafted since then. You ready for this? William Gay. That's it. Like in a short span of time, they drafted all these guys, and then boom, they couldn't draft again. While Dick LeBeau was here the first time, their best while he was defensive backs coach or the defensive coordinator, the first time their best defensive back they picked was Willie Williams, undersized guy drafted in the 5th round. Their best sense, William Gay, 5th round draft pick, undersized guy. That short little gap in between, they were very good. Steelers should never draft a cornerback again. Look at Justin Lane. I know he's got a thing with us already, but Justin Lane, I'm sorry, you ain't that dude. You're just not that dude. James Pierre took your job. So yeah, don't draft anybody. Don't sign them free agents. For me, Nelson and Hayden, when they're gone, this defense sucks. Like when they are both gone, this defense is terrible. When one of them is gone, it's not as good. Hayden, Nelson, last people I would cut. I would cut everyone on offense. I'd cut Vince Williams. I would cut not Cam Hayward. I'd cut Tuitt before I would cut Hayden or Nelson. Find a way to make it up. Don't get those two guys gone. And frankly, a lot of the arguments you see where you would let one of those guys go, you're saving that money only to spend it to sign Sutton or Hilton, who are not at that level. They are not a Hayden. They are not a Nelson. And Joe Hayden, look, he's not who he was when he was younger, but every game he's gone, this team just gets exposed on the right side in pass coverage. Absolutely gets exposed. Every single game Hayden is out. Hayden is still that dude. So for me, those two have to stay.
Do you think either of those two could be getting an extension? Because I believe they're both entering last year's deal again. to save some money?
I'd extend Hayden. I'd extend him a couple of years. Nelson, more questionable. It depends on if you can replace him. Hayden, his fit in this defense is perfect. Like when I broke down film on how this defense evolved last season, they put so much on Joe Hayden with one qualification. Joe Hayden has one qualification to his game, and that is he either covers deep or he covers short, and that's it. That's the only qualification you have. If you give him that, like Joe Hayden, your job on this one is to cover deep, he's phenomenal. If you're like Joe Hayden, your job on this time is to cover the short areas, he's incredible. If you're like Joe Hayden, lock down this guy no matter what route he runs, he can get beat because his speed isn't there, right? He's not as fast as he was when he's younger, and that's it. If you give him that one thing, he is phenomenal. If you give him just part of the field to cover, locks it down. Love Joe Hayden. He's a playmaker. Got to stay.
Yeah, I agree. If they cut him, I would be pretty upset by that. That would be a sad day in my household. I will not lie. But moving on to more corners here. Mike Hilton, Cam Sutton. It really feels like they're going to come down to one of those guys. And going back to that Jerry Dulac report that I've been talking about a little bit today, he said between the two, it's not Hilton who'd be coming back, which was a little surprising to me. But that's the Steelers insider guy. I'm curious to know your thoughts between those two. Who would you bring back? Would you bring back either? Would you bring back both? Like, what are you thinking there?
That is interesting that he said Sutton over Hilton. Because, like, Mike Hilton is Mike Tomlin football. Mike Hilton plays Mike Tomlin football. He is exactly Mike Tomlin's dude. Like, that is Mike Tomlin's definition of a defensive back. And I'm a big fan. If they lose Mike Hilton, who's taking that role? Who's blitzing? They don't have another defensive back who can blitz. Terrell Edmonds can't blitz like Mike Hilton can. Mike Hilton was a beast early in the season before his injury. And there's your qualification. If he's not 100%, if they're looking at him after that injury and be like, Mike Hilton's not Mike Hilton anymore. He's not going to be that dude. He's going to be a bit slower. He's going to be a bit less, and it's just not going to work out. Then you got to go Sutton. For me, Mike Hilton in that slot blitzer role, which has become a very valuable commodity in the current NFL, especially with a lot of the motion we use, a lot of the outside plays, jet sweep, stuff like that. A guy like Mike Hilton is a really important piece to have on your team. I don't know if maybe the idea is he's just going to fetch too much and there's no way we can pay him, and Cameron Sutton's going to be cheap, because who's going to pay Cameron Sutton to be a starter? They're not. He's not that dude. He's not a starter. He's a great backup. He's a great rotational guy. I'd love to have them both back. Last year I said they're the top. We have the best top four. James Pierre makes one expendable, and to me that could be either of them. But I will warn you, if it's Sutton that comes back, he is not going to overtake Mike Hilton's role in the nickel. They're going to have to redesign the nickel defense if they do that. If he's your number 3 corner, your nickel defense isn't what it was. And it's not going to be as good because Sutton cannot blitz. He's terrible at it. He's absolutely terrible at it. In run support, he's not good. He's passable. He's not good. He can make tackles. Yeah, he can do stuff at times. But he's no Mike Hilton. He doesn't read the run lanes. He doesn't read it like Mike Hilton does. He just doesn't. Cameron Sutton cannot be that dude. He's a great deep coverage guy. He's kind of that jack of all trades, master of none. And if he does have a strength, it is just straight following guys deep. Even like if he replaces, to me, he is the guy that would let Nelson go. Because he can be that guy. He can be Steven Nelson. He can't be Joe Hayden. When Nelson's out, Cameron Sutton can fill that role. When Joe Hayden's out and Cameron Sutton goes in, the right side of that pass defense gets exposed because he can't do what Hayden does. So for me, well, I guess I'm backtracking a bit. I'm saying you could see Sutton brought back and Nelson let go. That would be an option for the Steelers. But I don't think that will happen. Whoever they keep, it's going to change things because losing Hilton hurts, but losing Sutton hurts too. I don't know. That's a hard one for me. I go back and forth on it constantly.
Yeah, that's going to be one of the things. So I don't think anyone blitzes in the NFL like Mike Hilton does. I think if you said who's the best blitzing defensive back, Mike Hilton. Like,
Yeah.
I can't think of anyone that can.
I think in 2019, Logan Ryan was close to that. And he wasn't this year.
He's not that guy anymore.
Yeah, he wasn't in New York. They used him differently.
So moving on, we got a little bit of time left. So let's hit up a couple other backups before we look at a little bit of special teams. But when it comes to those outside linebacker spots, like it could be the 4th spot, could be the 5th spot, Olasun Kame, Adeni, or Cassius Marsh.
Olasun Kame Adeniyi.
Okay.
I learned how to say his name, so I say it every chance I get.
Okay. I thought it was just Adeni. Dang.
Yeah. Olasun Kame Adeniyi. The only pause I take on this is Adeniyi was number 2 in special teams snaps. Number 2 on the team behind only Jordan Dangerfield, who, by the way, is also a free agent. So it's another year where your top special teams guys are free agents, just like last season. I could see Ola brought back because of that if he's cheap, but he was nothing on defense. Like, he played a lot of snaps and he did nothing. Great dude. Like, he gives good effort. He just, he's not that guy. He's a college defensive end. He is not an outside linebacker, but he's reliable on special teams. Cassius Marsh, I like him better on the field than Adeniyi. I like him better on the field. So for me, I would bring back Marsh of those two, which again leaves you in another lurch with special teams because Adeniyi was solid there. And Jaron Elliott, right? He's gone again, but I mean, you assume he won't be back. But then last year he was back, and like, who knows? He's that guy that the Steelers can just be like, "Hey, Jaron, you're playing. You want to play football again?" And he's like, "Sure."
Yeah, he's just kind of the person you call when there's no one else left to play for you, what it kind of feels like. But just flipping over the special teams as we round out our podcast here. Chris Boswell, someone that the Steelers could restructure, even save $1 million in the cap. Jordan Berry, he had probably the best year of his career in 2020. Are both those guys destined to come back?
I hope Jordan Berry's back. I like having an Australian on the team. I like that. It's just it's kind of nice. We could find another one. Steelers. When was the last time the Steelers had a good punter? I mean, for goodness sakes, we drafted Daniel Sepulveda and he didn't work out.
3rd round.
Yeah, that dude was my draft crush. The Steelers grab him. He had these incredible hang times, and then he just gets hurt and can't do it ever again. It was ridiculous. But yeah, I think Jordan Berry's a punter. I don't care if he comes back.
I tell you what, there's another punter that could be drafted crazy high. The kid from Miami, I can't remember his name, but could be a punter that goes in like the first 3 rounds again.
Wouldn't that be great?
Sure.
Wouldn't that be fun? I hope. I mean, if your team's really bad, maybe he brings you value.
I suppose. But looks like we're at the top of the clock, Geoffrey. So I think it's time to sign out. But
we got one more. We got one more guy we got to cover.
Who's that one guy?
We didn't get to the defensive line.
Uh-oh. Who did I miss? Tyson Alualu?
Tyson Alualu. We got to cover him real quick.
Go for it.
Tyson Alualu. I think he's gone. But I would love for him to be back. I mean, like, he's that guy. He has been so good in that role. He's not going to give you a ton of snaps. When he has to play a ton of snaps, he's not that great. But when you limit his snaps and he likes to come in and just wreck people's face, he comes in and wrecks people's face. And I love that. I love that about him. So I'd love to see him come back, but meh. You can also move on.
With him, though, one of the things, like, it would bug me if I was an NFL player. He's 1 tackle away from 400 on his career. That would just bug me. Be at 399 and just be like, yeah, I'm done. Whatever. That means nothing to me.
Yeah, bring him back.
That would bug me, substantially. It'd be like, no, I'm going to come back for 1 year.
He was the second oldest player on the team behind Ben.
Exactly.
How cool was that? Like, let's go with it.
One more year for Tyson Alualu. I guess we'll have to wait and see. But as we get to the end of our show, is there anything else you want to plug and throw out there?
My new film room series that I'm going to take to get me through the draft. I looked through it and I'm going to re-go through. I think it's a great thing. I don't know if people will latch onto it, but I'm going to go through the entire season 1 week at a time. Tomorrow is week 1. I'm going to pick a player, maybe 2, depending on if they play right next to each other, and kind of look at the Steelers, what they did right, what they need to do looking forward to next season. And for game 1, New York Giants, week 1 of the 2020 season, I go back, look at Benny Snell's only 100-yard game of his career so far, why he got there, and what we can take into next season. It's really good. It's largely about the offensive line because, yeah, Benny Snell doesn't just get 100 yards. It's the offensive line. So that's a great one to look for. And I'm going to continue that series with week 2, the week after. So each week we're going to go for 17 weeks on that. It'll be fun.
Yeah, looking forward to that for sure. For myself, make sure to click over to behindthesteelcurtain.com. Tomorrow I should have an article up on Trey Lance and why that fit, that mock draft that CBS threw out there in the universe. It might be possible, might not be, but you should read my story and find out the way I feel about it. But just make sure you're clicking over, doing that, listening to the entire family of podcasts from Behind the Steel Curtain. We got tons of content, more than anyone else. I guarantee it. When it comes to your Pittsburgh Steelers, make sure you're clicking over, listen to all our stuff. Great stuff every single day. Some podcast stuff only, some YouTube stuff everywhere. Just make sure you're checking out the website, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. This was the first edition of The Curtain Call, the latest podcast of the Behind the Steel Curtain family. So thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to tell a friend and come back next week. We'll have more fun all the way up until next season, until I guess we got to know some more enemies. But until then, my name is Michael Beck, and for Geoffrey Benedict, thanks for hanging out with us. We'll talk to you soon.